Dan, thanks for meeting us here at Evo. We're big fans of Forza and we're big fans of driving. So the first question is a slightly tricky one, but for our readers who absolutely adore the driving experience, can you tell me what Forza 5 offers them in particular?
So what I find is interesting and often misunderstood about making a great simulator. People tend to approach physics and simulation from a driver perspective. And the issue is that from a driver and a magazine perspective, obviously, you're usually dealing with the testing of a car, which is actually the end result of all the physics, but it's not the physics itself. So for example, what that means is we don't simulate understeer, we simulate suspension architecture, tire dynamics, heat in the tires, air pressure in the tires, body roll, body stiffness, and those result in understeer. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So people ask me like, well, how do you recreate the understeer in a car? It's like, well, I just recreate the car, and the car understeers. So physically, obviously games have come along a long way in the last, let's say 15 years. You look at a Midtown Madness or maybe a Project Gotham Racing, the original one. The processors are more powerful, but more importantly, we know more about physics. And we're now at a place power-wise on the Xbox One that we're able to recreate things that are on the very cutting edge of what we know about cars. I don't mean know about simulation, I mean know about cars. Now, for example, in Forza Motorsport 4, we had a very novel approach to doing tires. We worked with Pirelli and they gave us test data, and we changed our tire simulation so that we could input the data without any manipulation from us. So that meant a player was literally driving test data. And so what we're able to simulate to players is a level of depth that just, it's not only that power-wise it wasn't possible on last generation hardware, I mean it wasn't, but it's not just the power, it's the approach. We now know more about tires than the tire manufacturers know about their own car, their own tires.
I'm really interested to know about the open wheel effect. Open wheelers are a feature of Forza 5, the new game. So can you tell me whether you have things like the tyres warm up when the brakes get hot on the front? Does that happen in the game?
That is, so you get the prize. That's absolutely the best question I've been asked, probably this entire, so thank you for that. No, we don't, so you got me. That is fantastic, by the way. Yes, you're absolutely right. So tires, the tires are affected by the heat of the brakes, and especially like a carbon ceramic brake gets incredibly hot and dissipates that heat. That's what's so great about the carbon ceramics. But you're right, with an open wheel, you're going to actually get that in the tire. So we don't simulate the brake heating up the tire. We do simulate, though, how much rolling friction heats up the tire, how much the air cools the tire down at higher speeds versus lower speeds. So we do simulate all that.
Fascinated to know about your relationship with car manufacturers, and in particular the designers and the engineers of car manufacturers. How close do you get to these guys? What do you have in common?
Well, so this is the reason that we partner with manufacturers. Obviously, it's nice having a promotional partner with someone such as Audi, or in the past we've had with BMW or Ford or something like that. But for me as the creator, what's more interesting is the partnerships that give us engineering. And the great thing about Audi is the race team. We get great data about Le Mans, we get great data about the R18, how they actually constructed that car, aerodynamics, and of course their production cars as well.
We're moving into the next generation of hypercars at the moment with the Porsche 918 coming up and LaFerrari, and in particular the McLaren P1. You have a close relationship with McLaren, but their data analysis and their engineering seems to be a step up. How have you found the relationship with McLaren?
McLaren, what's happening right now with the rebirth of the hypercar? You know, it's basically been 10 years since we've had a real reboot of the hypercar. And you're right, the 918, the P1, and the LaFerrari are absolutely in a different league than the Enzo and the Carrera GT and the F1 even, which was way ahead of its time. You know, so there's no mistaking that, you know, McLaren didn't create a hypercar for a while because the F1 was so ahead of its time. So understanding how they do torque vectoring, how they do hybrid assists, understanding how they architect their geometry, these cars defy physics. Yeah. They're fast in a way and drivable in a way that shouldn't be possible at 900 horsepower. I mean, honestly, the front tires on that P1 are nowhere near wide enough. And yet, the car handles amazingly. So we actually do work with them to update our physics in the game because they're learning things about the physics of cars that weren't known 2 years ago.
Do you feel like you've maximised the potential of the new Xbox console and also the cloud with Forza 5?
What I expect over the years is, yes, we're going to get more out of the cloud, we're going to get more out of the box itself as we all learn to optimize. And the cloud is really the intangible, because we've now done things for the original Xbox, for Xbox 360. We know that optimization curve as we all share secrets as developers. The cloud is the secret bit, because we've not done this on a generation before. So we're doing some really cool stuff with the AI and the cloud. And yeah, Drivatar and being able to update the game seamlessly and really be reactive to the community, that's very cool stuff out of the cloud. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, honestly, we're doing incredible computing on the cloud that could not be done locally. But you can't use the cloud for things that you update every second, right? You need it to be a little bit more asynchronous. But once you embrace that idea of asynchronous, you can come up with features that can utilize the tonnage of processing power that's up there.
Feedback is so important to our readers and so important in the way that you enjoy driving a car. Can you explain to me how the feedback has improved on Forza 5?
There's two aspects to that you may be referring to. I think one is, what is the feeling of moving in and out of a slipstream, and what is the feeling of it shimmying around when you're on heavy braking, or maybe downshifting and heel toe while you're downshifting into a corner. And the feeling is more like force feedback in a steering wheel, which is aligning torque similar to a shopping cart. It's based on the kingpin angle. Anyway, I won't go too much deeper. I'm sure your readers know about this. The nice thing about aligning torque and force feedback is it's basically free out of our engine, because we simulate kingpin inclination, we have camber and toe and caster and all of that, which affect it. When it comes to simulating the airflow over the car, that's where it's nice to be able to work with teams like Mclaren and Audi. Those teams have so much data about aerodynamics that we don't have to. There's some things that are easier for us to do than it is for them. We don't need to simulate the air moving over every fairing. They do all of that when they really model the car. What we need to know is how much all of that collectively changes the load on top of each of the tires based on different speeds and based on different conditions, what their angle of attack is versus the air. So that's one of the rare times we can actually use their test data as input data into our game.
For our readers, Dan, the sound effect, the engine noise of a car is so important to the overall driving experience. Can you tell me how you've managed to model the sound of these cars, and in particular why Forza 5 takes the game on to another step?
To make great simulation, we couldn't just focus on graphics. We had to focus on audio, we had to focus on physics, we have to focus on AI, not just in innovation, but also how you distribute the power of the box. So, one game or another game, different teams have different goals, and so they may change that blend and try and emphasize graphics, for example, more, or maybe emphasize something else. We want to make sure that we emphasize audio equally. We capture the audio on a dyno, and we put different mics on the front, the back, we put it inside under the engine. We try and capture the difference between the plenum and the intake versus the exhaust and underneath the engine. We then blend all those sounds together in real time with a physical simulation of the sound. And that's what makes our cars sound the way they do. So the reason to do it on a dyno is so we can get the difference between half load and full load as you're revving up through it. And then we build those in real time back in the game.
Dan, last question, another slightly tricky one, but to enjoy the performance car these days is actually quite hard to do. Social acceptance, speed limits, all sorts of pressures on the modern motorist. Do you see Forza 5 as a substitute to real driving involvement?
So the thing I love about working on Forza is that it is different things to different people. And what I love about car people in general is that most of the ones I know are hugely opinionated. Fairly certain that they're right about things, and I love that because I like arguing. I like that. That's why I like cars, right? But in my position, I actually have the perspective to understand nobody's really right. We're all just very opinionated about it. So what we've got is a game where we never compromise on the physics. Never. We're always pushing to learn more and implement it, learn and implement, right? But then we add assists that make it easy to drive. And that means that when you've got someone who's ready, they can drive it with a wheel, raw simulation. But we have 5-year-olds that play. I mean, what? Almost 40% of our players in France are women. So this is the diversity that cars bring in. Now, what I found is that most people think that everyone that plays Forza is like them. Like, yeah, I'm a car guy and I play Forza, and all my friends that play Forza are car guys, so everyone that plays Forza is a car guy. And that's not true. It just isn't. But what I love is I want people who are really into cars to feel like it's their home. It's hand in glove. It fits them so well. And I want a 5-year-old to have a room to grow and have a great time and smash up cars. And I want a woman in France to express her passion for cars through our game. So do I see it as a substitute? For some people it is. For some people it isn't. For race drivers, it's a practice thing. Stefan Sarzin came to our studio before Petit Le Mans and took 2 days of practice in our game at our studio. He just lived at our studio, ate lunch with us, practiced, and then he went to Petit Le Mans and got pole position. So we've got fans like that, and we've got 5-year-old kids playing split screen, smashing up cars. What I can say is that for the 5-year-old kid, it's replacing Matchbox cars, right? For Stefan Sarzin, it's replacing track time. So there's fantasy fulfillment that way. Also, when I'm thinking of buying a new car, I'm incredibly faithful to my wife, but I am not faithful at all to my car. I like to switch cars up, I like to abuse them, I'm horrible on cars. But before I buy a car, I always play them in racing games, especially Forza Motorsport because of the physics. So before I bought my M3, I drove it in the game. So that way, it's replacing another part of the automotive experience by replacing that kind of test drive. Because when I test drive a car, I can't take it on the track.
Thanks for your time, Dan. It's been an absolute pleasure meeting you.
Absolutely. Thank you.